Welcome to Uncomfortable Truth Podcast. I'm with my special guest, Quincy Whorf. Can you please tell the audience a little about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Quincy Whorf, and I am a personal development coach who specializes in reframing trauma and addiction and all kinds of other stuff. And I've been doing that for over 23 years now.
Wow, long time.
Long time.
Um, how do you help clients overcome limited belief and self-sabotage behavior that holds them back from achieving their full potential?
Um, Well, you have to kind of figure out where those beliefs came from before you can change them. And a lot of the times, the way that we figure out where those beliefs come from is by looking at the things in our life or the people in our life that we resent the most or the people that we're mad at. Um, I believe that anger is is a powerful tool that not only helps us find out who we are, but helps us find out where we're limiting ourselves from being our best self.
Okay, that's so true. What are
Hmm.
some practical strategies individuals can implement to enhance their communication skills and improve their relationship with loved ones?
For me, what I've learned over the years working with people is that communication, the number one key to communication is learning how to talk for ourselves, not how to talk at people or talk to people that will change them. If I'm, such as that if I'm, mad at my husband for some reason, if I say something to him like, you really pissed me off or you really hurt my feelings, the second I say you, that person is no longer listening, right?
Mhm.
But if I say I was really upset by the way that this all went down and this is how it affected me, then all of a sudden it becomes a conversation about my experience, not about what you did wrong. And we spend a lot of time in this country, especially talking at people about what they're doing wrong instead of talking for ourselves. So I try to help people see where they're not talking for themselves and give them words that give them power to communicate what's going on with them.
Yes, that's so true. I learned that in a parenting class years ago when I first had my child. And
Mhm.
another thing I learned in that class was emotional banks. So
Mhm.
your bank start when you first meet somebody, your bank is at 100%, and
Mhm.
as soon as you do something wrong, now it's at 90%, 80%.
Mhm.
Then eventually you at zero, and you can't win them back because their bank is so low now.
Yep, that is true. Yeah, I always refer to that as like, chopping down a tree. Make
Mhm.
sure the reason you're saying what you're saying or getting mad at what you're getting mad at is worth weakening the tree that you're about to cut down.
Yes. Can you share some proven techniques for cultivating resilience and developing a growth mindset,
Um,
especially in challenging times?
yeah, I mean, I think that part of the biggest thing about being resilient and having a growth mindset is learning how to pause when there's an emotional reaction within you in any situation, right? Like my emotions are a red flag that something's going on and something's bothering me. But if I use those emotions to generate my argument or to um, be my jumping off place into an argument, the ability to be rational is gone from the second I get emotional, right?
Mhm.
So if I learn how to hold on to those emotions and not respond in that moment and just kind of observe what's happening, I can get a better understanding of what's going on with me than what is about to happen, right? But that takes self-awareness, and self-awareness is probably the hardest thing for people because usually most arguments and most emotional confrontations happen because somebody was caught unaware of themselves.
Yes, I was just talking about that in a past episode. So basically, when people get in arguments, they yell and curse at the same time, which they don't
Mhm.
have to do. Either this, they could talk at a normal pace and express themselves instead of yelling and cursing at somebody.
Yeah. Or just wait until the emotion's gone. Like
Hmm.
acknowledge that you're upset and just say, I can't talk about this right now because I'm too upset about this. Can we come back to this later? And people think that that's crazy, but at the same time, it's like, well, how important is this relationship that you're about to ruin with your emotionally charged conversation? Because if it's not that important, then knock yourself out, right?
Hmm. What
Or
do you
if you
think?
want to, if you don't want to feel bad about yourself, then don't jump into it. But if you're okay with feeling bad about yourself, then by all means, jump into an emotional conversation and act like a complete idiot. By all means.
Mm. What you think about people that feel like you running away when you do stuff like that? When you having an argument, you be like, okay, I'm gonna step away. I'm gonna take a walk. I'll be right back. And they feel like you're running away from that, running away from the conversation instead of tackling it head on.
I think that that's gaslighting. I think that anybody who thinks that it's okay to have emotionally charged conversations like that is just looking to be right and is just looking to manipulate you and pull you out of your center so that they can win the argument. But if they're really passionate or if they're really concerned about the conversation that they want to have and you're not in a place to talk about it, they'll go, okay, I understand. Let me know when you can have a conversation that isn't going to affect you this way. Yeah, most
Yes.
people just want to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Probably what's wrong with this country in the biggest way is everybody is fighting to be right. And being right, if that's the most important thing to you, then that's small-minded, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's that saying? People who want to be right are not the same as people who want to do the right thing. And doing the right thing means being willing to take the time, be cautious, be precise, learn how to communicate in a way that is effective, not just loud and not just mean. So being right is it's a dangerous character defect that we all suffer from, and some more than most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so right. My family always told me never to say sorry.
Mm.
They say always use words like apologize, and like oh my bad, my fault or something like that, but never say sorry because it show weakness. What do you think about that?
I don't think that I'm sorry shows weakness as much as it's a band-aid
Mm-hmm.
to a situation, right? But if I really feel bad about something that I've done, to say I was wrong is probably the hardest sentence in the world for people to say because nobody wants to really admit that they were wrong. Like when I know that I'm in the wrong, for me to say I was wrong is the most humbling way to apologize to somebody because it's not, I'm sorry doesn't mean anything anymore because people use it so often that it's kind of like saying good morning. It has no real meaning to it anymore. But to say different words, and I think that the power of apologizing to somebody is an incredibly strong position in a conversation. Like a lot of the times when I work with couples or I work with people who have had, fights with their significant other or fights with somebody else, I often tell them to start the conversation with an amends because it's coming from a power position, actually.
Yes.
It's coming from the place of saying, look, I was wrong. The way I handled this was not the right way to do this. And I was wrong for saying the things that I said to you. What I meant was blah, 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 right? Like I should have spoken for myself. I should not have spoken for you. I should not have, you know, cut you down to make myself feel better. I should not have whatever it was. Because only when you come from that place can you really exhibit any kind of change or change of mind or open-mindedness to there being another solution other than yours,
Hmm. Yes.
right?
I've been in a situation personally like that where I was apologizing for like anything and everything. Even though I felt like I wasn't wrong, I was apologizing just to please the person. And then one day, I said to that person, I said, "Yo, I can't keep saying sorry to you. I'm like, it's being redundant now." And she's like,
Mhm.
"What's wrong with you saying sorry for situations when you're wrong?" I'm like, "I don't feel like I'm wrong. I'm just saying sorry just to please you." What do you feel
Mhm.
about that? How you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that that's a tricky thing too. I think that it's better to say, I don't see my part in this the way that you see it.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll have to, let you know if that changes. But, the thing that when certain people want us to apologize for something that we don't think we're wrong in or we can't see yet, it's more about them being right about how wrong we are than them actually getting the apology. I mean, what that situation sounds like is more of a power play than an
Mhm.
actual looking to resolve something, right? Like
Yes.
I just want you to know I'm right, and if you apologize, then you'll know I'm right.
Mm.
And
I
that's different.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
My next question for you is, How do you guide teens and young adults into navigating the complexities of adolescence, including peer pressure, anxiety, and depression?
Um, kids are great. I love working with teenagers and I love working with parents. And the thing is that, we look at we look at the drug and alcohol problems that are going on in our country, especially when they start with the youth. And, we live in a country that says, don't drink, don't do drugs, it's bad, it'll kill you. But we don't talk about why kids do those things, right? And probably the number one reason kids do those things, there's three reasons. The first one is peer pressure, right? I don't want anybody to think I'm not cool if I don't do what they're doing, right? Another one is they're curious. They want to see what it's going to do to them, right? And the third thing is for it to change how they feel, which is probably the biggest thing, right? And most of the time, kids don't even know, or people don't even know that they're doing those things to change how they feel. Because we don't live in a society that really talks about how do we change how we feel? What is the antidote to changing how we feel besides physically altering ourselves, right? And anxiety and depression, those things are normal feelings that happen within the human experience, right? But we've made it sound like having anxiety is the worst thing on the planet because we don't teach kids or we don't teach people how to deal with anxiety, right? A lot of times anxiety is fear about the future, right? It's being afraid of how am I going to interact with these people? What am I going to do with my life? It's focusing on things that are creating a stress in us that are sometimes a good thing but too much of can be, overwhelming, right? So how do we deal with those things? So a lot of the times when I talk to kids, it's like, what can you do to alleviate that anxiety? And most of the time it's bringing them into the moment. We spend, a lot of time in our heads focusing on the future or regretting the past, which is where depression comes from, right? So if we can learn how to be in the day that we're in, right, and just be in the moment that we're in, usually those feelings dissipate pretty quickly, right? But that means not thinking about ourselves. The selfie generation, as we have learned to call them, all of a sudden everybody is so self-absorbed with themselves and being in their own space in their own body that we don't even see other people at all. We don't talk to other people. We are not interested in other people. And the fastest way to get out of depression, anxiety, anything, really any feeling is to ask somebody else, how are you? What's going on with you? Tell me what you like about anything. You know what I mean? Talk to somebody else about what's going on with them. Nobody knows how to have a conversation anymore. No wonder there's so much anxiety going on in the world. There's so much depression because we don't connect on a intimate level, on an emotional level, on an intellectual level with other people anymore. It's all, oh, well, we'll just watch TikTok for 3 hours. Or,
Mhm.
how can I get people interested in me by talking about myself for the next 800 days in a row, whatever it is, right? But nobody's talking to other people like this, having a conversation with other people. When I'm thinking about you or I'm thinking about answering a question that you asked me, I'm not thinking about myself. I'm not having anxiety. I'm in this moment connected to you. There's no anxiety, there's no depression, there's no anything going on other than this moment. And that's what people are missing more than anything, especially kids.
Yes, you're so right. It seems like we live in a shock culture value right now where only thing that matters is shocking the person that's watching the video or listening to that video.
Mhm.
Because if you anything positive don't really go viral, but anything negative like fights, um, women half naked,
Mhm.
women saying the craziest things, men asking us women crazy questions.
Mhm.
These are the things that's going viral in the world today, not nothing positive.
Somebody behind my shop, bet she gon' trip. Tell me I'm the girl in the streets. Think about me when he brushing his teeth. He keep flexing, I leave him on scene. How to freestyle when they know what I mean. Like that, you could've stacked. This is moonwalking, so you know I got bands. If he shine, I don't give a damn, and I'm still getting what? Trying to be low, he gon' hit on my gram. If he's smart, he gon' act like a fan. Thinking you bigger, they got your guys. This is so I give him a pass.
Totally, 100%. And that it's sad, it's sad because everybody is in this place where it's like, where do I get the most attention? If we could shift everybody's paradigm to how do I give people my undivided attention instead of how do I get the most attention, people would feel better in a minute.
How can individuals develop a deeper sense of self-awareness and self-acceptance, leading to increased confidence and self-esteem?
That's a pretty complicated question, but again, it comes back to starting with, asking myself three questions. What do I want? How do I feel? What do I think? Right? So not only are we not connecting to other people, but now more than ever, we're not connected to ourselves. And when you ask anybody, what's going on with you? How are you doing? Everybody has a standard answer of, oh, I'm fine, right? Or they go into this long, drawn out story of how tortured and how, awful their life is. And whatever we put energy into, it grows, right? Whatever we water grows. And if I want confidence, then I have to do things or behave in a way that gives me confidence. And usually that's not, playing video games or screwing around on my phone or any of those it's doing something that makes me uncomfortable in a way that grows me, right? Maybe it's reading an article about something that I know nothing about. Maybe it's learning how to have a conversation with somebody that, that terrifies me. Like, it's the social anxiety that's going on in the world right now is staggering. But learning how to be social with people, learning how to be of service to somebody else, learning how to do something well, right? Being willing to make mistakes and knowing that no matter what mistake you make, that it's survivable. I think that there's this cancel culture problem where people are so afraid to take risks or so afraid to make mistakes because if they make a mistake, then they're going to be, excommunicated from life. And, we can't grow, we can't become more confident, we can't become, self-sufficient without learning how to make mistakes and know that we can survive them. And if we're surrounded by people who don't allow for mistakes, we need to get rid of those people from our lives.
Do you believe addiction is hereditary?
Yes and no. Do I believe that there's a biological component to addiction? Absolutely. Do I believe that probably one of the strongest parts of addiction being hereditary has to do with situational? Yes, I think that it's both, right? I mean, I know people who are recovering alcoholics who grew up in a house where there was no alcohol, right? And they're full-blown alcoholics. And I also know people who grew up in situations where, everybody in the house was an alcoholic and they're not, right? And I know people who had both. And I think that, you know, addiction becomes prevalent when that becomes the answer to all of my problems, right? And we don't see how that starts, but it starts with little things like I just want to change how I feel, right? I can't go, I can't have a good time without getting drunk, or, it starts with those little belief systems that turn, outside issues, right? Whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's shopping, whether it's sex, whether it's attention, right? All of those things where those things make me feel good and I cannot feel good without them, right? That's basically where addiction comes from. And so, so when people, if we don't talk about those things in the beginning about how addiction starts and the belief systems that start addiction, all of a sudden, you're in full-fledged addiction and it's hard to get out of,
You're so right about that because my mother growing up, she smoked and she drinks, but I never picked up drinking. I did it socially, but I never one drink and I'm good, two the most. But I never got pissy drunk like people around like stumbling, stuttering, peeing outside. I never did none of that type of stuff. And I see people do it. I'm like, why? Like, why? Like, I never understood why they get like that because I never got like that. I always knew my limit, and once I felt that limit, I didn't want to go past that limit.
Yeah. Well, and that's the difference. That's the biological component, right? Like my drinking as a kid, I never wanted to have one or two. I always wanted to be, butt naked drunk, right? Like that's how I always wanted to be because that was what I was aiming for. But then it got to a point where I couldn't do anything less than that. Like I couldn't have just one drink. I could do it once in a blue moon, right? but most of the time, every time I got drunk, I got blackout drunk. And that was not necessarily my choice at some point. Like it just became the only way I could do it. And that's the addiction part of it, not being able to choose, thinking I know what my limit is and not being able to choose to just stick to that limit. That's the difference between addiction and non-addiction.
Yeah, I got an overprotective aunt, and she has, let's see, one, two, three, four, five. She got 5 kids. All her kids are alcoholics. Every last one of them. Even her husband is alcoholic. And but like one of her sons, actually, matter of fact, basically, the 2 oldest always been alcoholics, but the other ones, they became alcoholics and drug addicts later on in life. So they didn't start drinking until they was 28, 29. They didn't start smoking weed until they was 36. And I never understood that, like why they wait in the later years to become alcoholics, and knowing how they see how their father was, knowing how they see how their brother. One of their brothers died from drinking too much. He drank so much where his body was paralyzed. He couldn't get out of bed. Then eventually he just passed away.
Well, and that's what addiction is. I mean, it's a slow beast, right? Like in the beginning, it sounds fun, and it doesn't even really matter how old you are when you start. Like you can start when you're 12, you can start when you're 28, and if you have the propensity to if you have an addictive personality and you have all the components lined up, it doesn't matter when you start. You know what I mean? It's once you start, you can't stop, and that's the problem. Right. And usually when we figure out that we can't stop, it's already a problem.
You ever seen the TV show Snowfall?
Yes.
So you seen the ending.
Yes.
The whole show he didn't have a drink, and at the end he had a drink and became just like his father.
Yeah. Yeah. There's people out there that's the truth for.
Yes. Can you provide some tips creating a personalized self-care routine that promotes overall well-being and reduce stress levels?
Probably my most favorite parts of my self-care routine have to do with meditating, right? Even if it's for 2 minutes a day, even if it's 20 minutes a day, it doesn't matter. It's about learning how to be comfortable in my skin and learn how to look at what's going on in my head without making it mean anything, right? And meditation is a practice. It's not something you learn how to do perfectly the first time. It's something you learn how to do over time. And the more you do it, the better you feel, right? The other thing about my self-care routine that I think is super important is being willing to constantly be reading something, constantly opening my mind to new ideas and new ways of doing things. Like I'm a really big believer that if I'm not feeding my brain makes up stuff that is not true, right? That I all of a sudden think is very true, and start making decisions based on that information. And so if I'm constantly feeding my brain new information and new ideas and new ways of looking at things, then I get to stay in a place of neutrality because I'm not falling victim to believing the crap that's going on in my head. Because it just, we have 65,000 thoughts a day, roughly. 90% of those are negative thoughts, and 15% of those negative thoughts are repetitive. And so if all I'm listening to and all I'm believing is what's going on in my head, I'm in a dangerous neighborhood,
That's so true. Like personally, like when I try to meditate, like people around in the house always interrupts me. And I always be like, even when I'm working, like doing like something like this, or if I'm doing making questions, editing a video, they always gotta bother me. And like I be telling them like I'm working. If I was had a regular job, like if I wasn't here, what would you do if I wasn't here? So why you want me to stop doing what I'm doing to help you do this when you can do it yourself?
Yes. Yep. That's what happens when you work from home. I have the same problem. So I get it.
I was doing the questions today for you and my next guest at 11:15, and I had the headphones halfway off, and I was I said, oh my goodness, my family member put a large amount of clothes in the washing machine and went to work. So now I gotta stop what I'm doing to hang their clothes up.
Oh God. Yeah.
I was so upset, but I didn't let it get to me to the point where it messed my day up.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. It's hard, working from home. I can be in the middle of an interview. I can be in the middle of working with a client, and here comes my son, my 17-year-old son, asking for like, can I have the car to go get food? It's like you do see I'm doing something, right? Like the whole world is not just about feeding you, child. So
So, right. Um, I do help clients, individuals, and overcoming hidden traumas and unresolved emotions, issues that may be hindering their personal growth.
mm, it depends. Like most of the time, people are pretty obvious to read if they're telling the truth, but sometimes it's people don't even know that they've got a trauma going on that is stopping them, right? So, the more questions you ask people, the more you learn about them, right? And because I'm not emotionally attached to the answer that they're giving me, right? I can see things that they can't see.
Mhm.
And I can go into deeper areas with them. And I think that until I became willing to let people ask me questions about stuff so that I could learn more, I couldn't have anything revealed to me about me that would help me, right? I mean, for years, I wouldn't let people get anywhere near me or ask me any kinds of questions that would make me uncomfortable because I didn't want people to see me because I was afraid if they saw me, they would, they wouldn't like me, right? And you have to want to get well. You have to want to get to a different place. And that means being able to be in a situation with somebody who can ask you the right questions so that we can both figure out what's getting in the way. And it really is just about being able to listen to somebody, hear what they're saying, and know how to ask questions that are going to get them down the path for them to see where their own loops are, right?
Mhm.
To learn the stories that they're telling themselves that are stopping them from being the person that they are. Everything emotional pain, trauma is important. We all have trauma. Everybody on this planet has some form of trauma.
Mhm.
And I don't think trauma is a bad thing. The situation may have been horrific, right? I give that to everybody. Like the situations that cause our trauma usually are horrific. But that trauma happened to help form you into being the person you're supposed to be in this lifetime, right? And if I can teach people how to look at trauma is not a bad thing, but as a tool to help them get to the place that they want to get to in life, then all of a sudden it's learning how to look at it from a different angle and to use it for what it's for. Not to use it to protect me from the rest of the world, not to use it to be a victim to life for the rest of my life, but to use it as a tool to make me into a person that has more power and more strength and more understanding and more potential to be, great in their lifetime than to
Yes.
use it to hide behind. And so, it's an amazing process to go through with somebody. It's amazing to watch somebody unfold the things in their life that have kept them from being the person that they want to be and watching them grow into this amazing person.
Mm. Understand. I'm gonna give you two examples. I'm gonna use myself as an example of my trauma. So
Mhm.
one of my traumas I realized is letting people get away with things.
Mhm.
And like for example, I met a girl, and it wasn't sexual or nothing like that. I liked the energy, and she was very creative. She made costume jewelry with
Mhm.
crystals and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to help her, so I tried to get her a license to have like a little table on the street somewhere where she could sell her jewelry and stuff like that. And I was gonna
Mhm.
fund it and stuff. And everybody kept telling me, stay away from that girl, stay away from that girl, stay away from that girl. I'm like, why can't I help somebody? Like it's not
Mhm.
sexual. Why can't I help somebody? And they always just bring that up, bring that up. So one day, for years they just kept bringing, like 2, 3 years, they just kept bringing it up, bringing that girl up in the conversation. So one day I'm walking with one of the people, and they just brought it up again. I just snapped, like just flipped out, like, yo, why you keep
Mhm.
bringing that up? This and that, this and that. Do I ever bring up any females I deal with? Did I ever do this or that? And I'm just flipping, going back and forth. And I started naming things, like stuff that females did to them that I
Mhm.
never mentioned, never do in their face and stuff like that. And I've noticed that's one of my traumas, letting people get away with stuff, and then I just blow up because I'm getting tired of it happening. And my other trauma was, I just quit smoking weed. I'm 33 days. I started January 1st. I think it's like
Awesome.
33 days.
Mhm.
And memories, like these memories, like it would flood me, and it would make me either very emotional, sometimes angry, sometimes sad, sometimes depressed.
Mhm.
And I equated it to withdrawals.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and so there's two different things going on here. The first situation is more about boundaries than it
Mhm,
is about trauma, right?
mhm,
And most people don't understand boundaries, right? Boundaries are do not cross this. This is the line, right? And if you step over this line, either you step over it or somebody else steps over it, right? There's going to be a problem, right? So when somebody keeps bringing up stuff over and over again that you don't want to talk about, right? You get to just say, I'm not having this conversation,
mhm,
right? That's a boundary, right? But when I all of a sudden get defensive and think that I have to explain myself to somebody on a regular basis, that has to do with me not knowing that I have the power to say, I'm not doing this with you,
mhm,
right? That no is a complete sentence, that this is the way that it goes. And a lot of the times, having no boundaries comes from a trauma where we were not allowed to have boundaries. We
mhm,
weren't allowed, growing up, I grew up in an alcoholic home. And so I didn't really have boundaries because I believed that I had to be perfect all the time, or I had to be funny, or I had to disappear, or whatever it is in order to survive or explain myself, right? Or be quiet, or not talk about how I feel, or not ask for my needs, whatever it was, right? And so as we get older, coming out and being an adult, right? And we're
mhm,
surrounded by people who know that they can just push our buttons all the
mhm,
time, right? It's up to us to say, look, I'm not doing this with you. We're not having this conversation. Move on. Let's talk about something else, right? And they don't have to like it and they don't have to respect it, but I
mhm.
have to respect it,
Yes.
right? And I don't owe anybody an explanation. I don't have to defend myself to anybody, right? If somebody doesn't like what I've done, that's on them,
Mhm,
right? And so my favorite thing in those kind of situations is saying, why is this bothering you so much?
mhm,
Why does what I did with this person bother you so much?
mhm,
Like, I don't understand, right? Now all of a sudden they're talking about them. They're
mhm,
no longer telling me what they think about me, right? And so
mhm,
that's one of those things that you switch around. And yes, withdrawing from marijuana, like there are it is an emotional process. It's probably the hardest part for people to go through when they stop using a substance outside of themselves. Like
mhm,
most of the times those substances are suppressing things we don't want to deal with,
mhm,
right? I want to feel good. I don't want to feel uncomfortable or pain or anything else, right? So when we stop doing that thing, all of that stuff like basically comes out of the pot, right?
mhm,
And if you can remember that those feelings, those emotions, that discomfort is really just a matter of process and doesn't necessarily mean anything, eventually it will die out and it'll stop happening as much, right? But it is a normal part of the process. When we stop doing something, it changes our chemistry. It changes the chemistry in our body, but it also changes the way our brain functions. And that's not a bad thing, but it is uncomfortable. And you can afford to be a little uncomfortable to be better
mhm.
than what you were,
All right.
you
Yeah,
know.
since we're on the topic about emotions and being uncomfortable, can you share some
Mhm.
techniques for managing difficult emotions such as anger, sadness, or anxiety in a healthy and constructive manner?
Yeah, I mean, feelings are a normal part of life. Allowing our feelings to run our life is a problem is basically how children behave, right? Like if you anybody who's had children or been around children see that when they get emotional, they cannot stop themselves from having that emotion. But as we grow up and get older, we learn how to make our feelings go away to behave better, right? Um, but feelings are important, and finding the balance between allowing myself to have my feelings but not allowing my feelings to dictate my life or dictate my decisions is called emotional maturity. And that takes, time, right? And like I said earlier, anxiety is about fear of the future. So all I have to do for that is change my focus. right? Just like a toddler, just like a kid, like if a kid's getting upset about anything, a toy that they can't find, or somebody taking their toy away or whatever it is, all you have to do is redirect that kid and their feelings will change and their focus will change. It's the same for us as adults. If I'm having anxiety about, going to breakfast because I'm afraid, I'm not going to know what to say to this person, all I have to do is remember, if I ask them questions about themselves and that, be focused on something else other than me, the anxiety will go away, right? If I'm depressed, the greatest thing to solve to cure depression, or even sadness, really, is to go for a walk. Just go for a walk, right? Go listen to a podcast. Go do something that distracts you from the feelings so that you can feel good enough or neutral enough to get yourself out of the pull of being pulled down, right?
That makes sense.
And anger, the greatest response to anger is to write it out on paper, right? Write down why you're angry. Write it all out until you get every feeling, every thought about that emotion out on paper. Because the second you put it on paper, it literally kills half of the energy behind that emotion. But most people don't want to take the time to do that. They just want to scream and yell.
One of your comments, somebody wrote a comment on your page, your website, and it was Alba, and she mentioned living a life full of freedom and self-love under your guidance. What steps do you typically take to guide individuals towards achieving self-love and personal freedom?
Well, Alva was a great client that I loved working with. And she was, she was super desperate to change the direction of her life and the way that she was living. She was super open to being willing to hear the hard stuff that she didn't want to hear for a long time. But she wasn't getting to where she wanted to get to in life. And a lot of that had to do with making other people responsible for her life. Even as an adult, people were responsible for her happiness, for her finances, for her career, for her everything, right? And we went through a series of exercises and a series of writing assignments that helped her see where she was making or giving other people her power away by making them responsible for her life. And I taught her how to take that responsibility back, right? So that when she was responsible for her own happiness, for her own well-being, and started making decisions that empowered her, but didn't give away her power, then all of a sudden she started to live a freer life.
Yeah, I hope somebody could take something from that.
Yes, me too.
Let me see. How do you help clients overcome the fear of failure, take criticism, take calculated risk, and embrace new opportunities that may lead to positive change?
Well, I like to change the definition of words, right? People hear the word failure and they think, that they're useless. They can't, it means they're bad at something. Everybody's bad at something in the beginning, right? Nobody starts out perfect. And we have this thing in this country called perfection paralysis, where everybody thinks they have to be perfect all the time. And if they're not going to be perfect, then they're not going to do anything at all. And truthfully, failure and mistakes and misstarts and restarts and all of that kind of stuff is all part of the process. And that's actually where confidence comes from. Confidence comes from me knowing that if I fail, right, that if I make a mistake, that I'm going to push through it anyway, right, regardless, start over and keep going. If I let failure stop me, right, then I wasn't really ready to do that to begin with, whatever that is. Right. And so if I really want something bad enough, if I really want to be different, if I really want to, have a different kind of relationship, or I want to learn how to date differently, or I want to start a business, or I want to, be a better parent, whatever it is, making mistakes is okay. But it's acknowledging that I made a mistake, that I failed at something, learn what I failed from it, learn what I'm supposed to learn from the mistake, but keep going, right? Not let the only reason failure is a bad thing is a lot of times people use failure as an excuse to stop. That's all they do. Failure or mistakes are an excuse to stop. When the truth is that they're really part of the process, and there's nothing wrong with failing or making mistakes. It's absolutely required in order to have confidence, in order to get to the place you want to get to.
Yes. Can you share some techniques for practicing mindfulness, living in the present moment?
Yeah, I have a saying all the time. I say, keep your head and your feet in the same place, right? And if you feel yourself not being self-aware, I tell people to stamp their feet on the floor and say, where are your feet? Where are your feet? Like, if I'm in my feet right now, I'm sitting in my house, in my office, having a conversation with you, right? And I focus my head on where my feet are. And that gets me into the moment that I'm into.
Okay. What are some effective methods of building healthy coping mechanisms and resilience in the face of adversity?
Um, there's so many of them. A lot of the times it's really just it's pausing. It's not reacting to the situation you're in, right? And giving yourself some space to deal with it. Most people have a really hard time giving themselves their own space to process what they need to process, right? And resilience is something that comes from knowing that no matter what's going on in my life, I can survive it, right? I can get through it with grace and dignity. I can I can be okay no matter what happens. I've dealt with divorce, I've dealt with death, I've dealt with so many different things in my life, and I don't like dealing with any of those situations, but I do know that getting through them and getting to the other side of them every time has given me the ability to know that no matter what comes at me, I can deal with it.
Yes. I'm divorced too, and my problem with divorce, it didn't come from my ex-wife. It came from family members that try to sleep with my ex-wife.
Oh,
And
that's not nice.
yes, and and this is one of the stories that went with the people I was telling you about that always bring up situations. So
Mhm.
basically, this relative, um, um, I guess he was a deacon. He was a deacon. He's my relative. He's a deacon, my cousin, and
Mhm.
he left the church. So he
Mhm.
calls one of my cousins, my cousin ex-wife, and said, "I think it's time. I think it's time." So she's like, "Time for what?" He said, "Is it time for me to let her know how I feel?" So about my ex-wife, you know.
Mhm.
So she calls my ex-wife. They talks about it, and he start inboxing her on Facebook, start texting her. Her never been the same for years since she was like 16 years old. Her never been the
Mhm.
same. Um, and but he don't know that this woman is different from other women. She's not gonna play around with that. So
Mhm.
immediately she told me immediately and sent me the text
Mhm.
messages. And in the text messages, he begged her not to tell me. You
Of
know,
course.
yeah. So I confronted him, and
Mhm.
he like, nah, cousin, it's not like that. She was reciprocating. Isn't that? I said, I got the text messages. Isn't that? He
Mhm.
said, she's not showing you all the text messages. I said, show me yours then. My phone delete my messages automatically. What phone would
Nobody's
delete?
phone does that.
Exactly. So now with the two people I was telling you about earlier that kept bringing up that girl, they like, why you worried about that, man? She free to do what she wants. This and that. This and that. I'm like, it's disrespectful. I'm like, my kids are teenagers. Like, I'm like,
Mhm.
I told my cousin, I said, you expect to walk around your boxers around my kid? I said, what do you think my kid's gonna think when they see you in the house? You know,
Mhm.
that I'm like,
Yeah.
you do even think about that? And
Yeah.
like, and and like and those cousins that agreed with him and like, oh nah, this and that, this and that. I had to cut them off too. I'm like, yo, if y'all agree with this, y'all might not read on my side, and y'all don't really see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Y'all just see in the society that we live in now that
Mhm.
everything is
Take
essential.
whatever you want, regardless of who it affects.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of people in the world that are like that, family members, friends, whatever. The sooner you realize that those people are toxic and get them out of your life, the better off you'll be. Just because you're related to somebody doesn't mean you have to like them or be friends with them or have them in your life.
Mhm.
Just because you've been friends with somebody since you were kids doesn't mean you have to keep them in your life, right? Like I have plenty of people that I've cut out of my life as a result of how toxic they are. They may not have started that way, but they ended up that way. And you know what? Life is too short to hang out with crazy people.
Yes. I never wanted to sleep with a family member, ex-wife, ex-girlfriend, or even a friend.
Yeah.
When friends, girlfriends came on to me, I told them in the room relationships.
Yeah.
I had a best friend. I worked at a dog daycare, and I had a
Hmm.
best friend, and his girlfriend worked there too. Very attractive girl. She was Spanish. She was about 3 feet, not 3 feet. She probably was like 4'6", but she was
Uh-huh.
regular. Very attractive. Like something off Telemundo,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So so she started having dreams about me, and she started telling people the dreams,
Mhm.
telling me the dreams. She makes slight comments. I'd be standing somewhere, and she accidentally fall into me, or pretend like she accidentally fall into me. So I told him, I'm like, she keep doing this, keep doing that. He confronted her, and after that, he never contacted me ever again. He never be my friend again. Then years later, like probably like last year,
Mhm.
um, I was buying weed, and he was at the same weed spot. And he's like, "Hey, I know you." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Your name's such and such." And he's like, "Yeah, this is nice. How are you?" I said, "I'm good." And he went about his business. He didn't try to ask for my number. He didn't try to like rekindle our past friendship.
Mhm.
That really messed up. And I had another situation like that too, where in my old building growing up, his girlfriend, same thing. And I told him, and he became violent. He actually tried to kill me. you
Oh
know,
God.
yes. You know,
Yeah.
guns came involved and out of it.
Yeah. Well, because a lot of the times people can't handle the truth. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? They can't. And being a principled person seems to not be as popular as it was at one time, which is unfortunate. People are just instant gratification of, I need your attention and I need it right now, regardless of who it hurts, is that's a problem, right? And the truth is that be the more principled I am, the fewer people I have in my life because the people who aren't principled don't want to hang out with somebody who is principled. And a lot of times people, that happens everywhere where people will have, husbands who, come on to friends or whatever, and you get to choose. Do you want to have the friend? You know what I mean? Or do you want to tell the truth? And it's, a lot of the times I won't say anything. There's been times when I don't say anything and I just withdraw from the friendship. And when they get done with that relationship and they say, what happened? You just kind of disappeared from my life. I'll say, you know what? I didn't want to be around that situation because your husband wasn't treating you the way that you were supposed to be treated, and I didn't want to get in the middle of your life. And they always go, "Oh, I wish you would have told me when it was happening." It's like, yeah, that doesn't always go well. You know what I mean? And it's not that I don't want to tell people the truth. It's that, if you're not ready to hear the truth, then I become the bad guy,
Yes.
and that's a real thing.
Yeah. I think it's a fair that they do that because
Yeah.
I like I feel they go to somebody comfortable they with, somebody they knew for a long time and they comfortable and they feel like it'd be easier for them to approach them with that
Mhm.
than to a stranger.
Yeah.
Like I said, I would never approach a family member or something like that, girlfriend, ex-wife, but I'll approach a stranger immediately, if I find them attractive. If they reject me, they reject me. You know,
Totally.
but every woman can reject me, but I think that's what it is. I think they're afraid to approach a stranger and be like, "How you doing? My name's such and such a
Mhm.
can I get to know you a little bit?
Yeah.
Or can I buy you a drink?" I think that's where it stands from.
Yeah, it's scarier to invest in somebody you don't know than it is to invest in somebody you do,
Yes.
for sure.
What are some strategies for developing effective time management skills, prioritizing tasks, and maintaining a healthy work-life balance?
Um, probably the best thing I can say about, it's funny because work-life balance is kind of a joke in a lot of to me anyway. Like there are times when my home life is more demanding than my work life, and there are times when my work life is more demanding than my home life, right? And I have to be careful to set boundaries in my life that make it easy for me to take care of myself in the day,
Mhm.
which means, not taking phone calls from anybody that's outside of a work thing between, certain hours. Because when you're at home, it's really easy to do all kinds of other stuff because you're at home, right? But I have to set boundaries for myself, right? And I have to know what I'm capable and what I'm not capable of. Like I don't answer the phone on Sundays, period. right? For anybody. Like Sunday is my day with my family, like by myself, even if I'm not with my family. You're like, I don't talk to people on Sundays. I don't talk about anything heavy on Sundays, right? Saturdays are usually Saturdays are usually days where, I spend time with friends and I make up time for, I do stuff that makes me rejuvenated, right? Whether it's, exercising or walking my dogs or whatever it is. Like I don't always have time to do that during the week, right? So it's really just about planning my time and knowing that whatever I focus on in my time is what's going to grow. So if I'm focusing on shit that isn't really mean anything, like I'm really good at being busy. I can be busy all day long, 24 hours a day. But is that busyness getting me somewhere, or is that busyness helping me avoid something else? Right? And so it depends on, what is my goal for the week? So a lot of the times I'll say, what do I need to accomplish this week? And that's what I do on Sundays is I ask myself, what do I need to accomplish for this week? And then I build my life for that week around that one accomplishment, right? And make sure that that's what happens. And so it has to do with what's my goal for the week? What am I trying to accomplish? If we don't ask ourselves those questions and we don't get anywhere, we wonder why. Right? We go, why am I spinning in place? Well, how did you set yourself up for the week? What were the questions you asked yourself about how you were going to spend your time this week? And, it's really easy to react to life. Like my phone rings all the time and people always want to spend time with me and people always want to talk to me. But if I do everything everybody else wants me to do, I don't get anything accomplished. So I have to say, what do I have to do first? And then where do I have time to give that time to other people?
Yeah. I came up with that question because I got 5 shifts. I got 5 interviews today. So, so after you, I got
That's
another
a lot.
interview. Yes, and then I think I got a little bit of break to my next interview. Then my next two is back to back. Then I probably got another 2 hours before my last one. And so that's why I asked you that question. I'm like, yo, I really overbooked myself. I haven't been asleep yet. I haven't been asleep yesterday. I edited a video all last night. I didn't finish editing the video till about, I think it was 2:30 in the morning. I finished editing the video. And then I traveled here to set up for the podcast. And I haven't been asleep. I got here, I started making the questions, I set up, I made breakfast for me and my brother. I cleaned up a little bit, and I haven't been asleep yet.
That's okay. You'll get sleep when you need to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know I end up losing a lot of sleep as well, but somehow I always make it up somehow. So you're doing what fuels you right now. You know what I mean? And it's like when you've got the energy and you've got the ability to do it, just push through and get it done. You know what I mean? Because that's what's going to fuel you. That's what's going to make you feel good. And we do it when we can, not always when we have to,
Okay. Can you provide a tip for creating a personalized self-care routine that promotes overall well-being and reduce stress levels?
Well, I think that requires knowing yourself and knowing what causes your stress, right? And if like, for some stress, money is a stress, right? So being on top of your money and being diligent about how you spend it, and knowing what it's doing and knowing where it's going, there's a routine that you can create around that. Some people, their phone stresses them out. Okay, so when are you going to not spend time on your phone every day to make sure that you get it really depends on what your stress is about, right? My stress is about taking on too many commitments at the same time, right? So learning how to say no and really paying attention to my calendar and what I have time for and what I don't. And just because somebody asked me to do something doesn't mean I have to say yes, right? So make sure that what I'm saying yes to is actually part of the plan that is going forward in my life at the moment. So reducing stress and having self-care is really about knowing what causes you stress and what rejuvenates you. Like, I love to get massages, but I don't always make the time to do that, right? And I just finished a long job and about 2 weeks ago, and I came home and I booked a fancy massage for myself and went to the spa by myself, and I was so happy. I could have moved into the spa and stayed there for a month, but like I did something for me that I needed, regardless of what anybody else was going to think about it, regardless of whatever was going on. I needed to do something that rejuvenated me. And if I don't make that a priority for myself, nobody else is going to by a long shot, you know? So
I understand that. I like bathhouses, and like you get massages at bathhouse too. But like I love like the sauna rooms, the ice cold rooms. I like the baths. And most people, like especially guys, they can't understand that because it's like, yo, y'all walk around naked. Yes, but we're not looking at each other. We're not looking at each other. Like,
yeah, I'm there totally zoned out in my own thing.
yeah.
That's
No,
so
but yeah,
funny.
I understand. Yeah. Let me see. I had a question. Okay, as a successful businesswoman, and before I start to ask that question, you mentioned that you don't answer the phone on Sundays, so this basically goes with that. But maybe you have something else that goes with it. As a successful businesswoman and experienced coach, how do you balance your personal and professional life while maintaining a commitment to your clients?
By really knowing and understanding that if I don't take care of me, I have nothing to give to you, right? Like, and that means like, I can sit and talk to clients all day long, but if I'm not continuing to grow, if I'm not continuing to, take care of myself, if I'm not continuing to get feedback, like I'm a coach, but I have a coach as well, right? Because, I'm really good at dishing out great information, but if I'm not getting new information and practicing new information, then I don't have information really to give, right? I will only have a limited amount. And so staying in the middle of being accountable to somebody and having people be accountable to me is part of this whole process. It's, when I think that I'm the top guru and that that there's nobody that can give me information, I'm in trouble, right? Because then my limitations will show up sooner than not. But it's just I have to keep growing in order to help other people grow. And I don't ever want to stop growing or learning or being open to new situations. That's key to my whole life,
That makes sense. I want to go back to the divorces. Share a lesson you learned from your own divorces and subsequent marriages that has informed your approach to help others in their relationships.
I think probably the most important thing I learned from my divorce and for my current marriage now is that, there's two people in a relationship, right? And every person has their own hula hoop, right? And if I stand in the middle of my hula hoop and let you stand in the middle of your hula hoop, our hula hoops should overcross each other, right? At some point, like a Venn diagram, right? And that's the relationship. But if I'm not taking care of everything that's in my hula hoop, right? Or I'm trying to take care of stuff that's in your hula hoop, we're going to be in trouble, right? So, I have to be a whole person and I have to be responsible for myself emotionally. I have to be responsible for myself financially. I have to be responsible for myself intellectually. I have to be responsible for my happiness. All of those things have to happen in my own hula hoop. And the same has to be true of the person that I'm in the relationship with, right? Like I can't fix him. I can't change him. I can't do anything to who he is. He has to want to do that on his own, right? It's not that I can't say to him, look, when this happens, it affects me, right? I can say those things all I want, but I can't expect him to change it just because I've said something to him, right? And I think that, my first marriage, like I was so in love with the idea of getting married and what it meant to be married that I wasn't really clear on what those boundaries looked like, what it meant to really be in a marriage. And being in a marriage is two whole people, hopefully, that have a common goal. And that common goal is to be compatible and to be companions for each other, but not necessarily to change the other person, not necessarily to make the other person do what I want them to do, right? But to enjoy our time together when we have the time together, right? And because if I'm not a whole person, then I can let whoever I'm in a relationship with dictate who they want me to be. And that's what happened in my first marriage, right? Like he wanted somebody that he could control and manage. And I thought that that's what marriage was, right? And I woke up one day and went, what am I doing? Like, I don't even know who I am anymore, right? And I lost my sense of self because I let him pull me out of the hula hoop. He made me believe that I was responsible for making him happy. I'm not responsible for making him happy. He's not responsible for making me happy. I'm responsible for making me happy. He's responsible for making himself happy. And if he's not happy, then he should do something about that.
Yes.
Right. And I think that that's probably the number one problem in relationships is people, you know, I'm happy in my relationship, but if my husband's not happy and he thinks it's my fault that he's not happy, we're going to have problems. And I can't make him happy. He has to make himself happy. And then we can be two happy people that have an experience together. But if I'm supposed to make you happy or you're supposed to make me happy, that's when problems start.
Yes. I actually got tricked into marriage. I had custody of my kids. I had custody of my daughter, not my son. She had custody of my son. I had custody of my daughter. And her father promised us a house if I married her. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I married her and I never got the house. But as soon as I married her, probably a month later, she left me and took the kids. And I went to court. Like, yeah, I want my daughter. Like, she took my daughter, and that she said she got her rights back. You married her, she got all her rights back. So you can't take the kids. You gotta do the process all over again.
Ugh.
And this is how I lost custody of my daughter. And
Mm.
and now I'm at the point where we can't even talk no more. Like I can't have no personal conversation, no educated conversation with her. It always end up verbal abuse towards me. And
Mm.
and it's over recently. This happened over senior dues. This happened over senior dues, and I never been to one of my kids' graduations. Never been to a graduation. Never been
Mm.
to a birthday party. Never been to no event that she do for my kids at all. And so she called me the other day, like, I need some money for senior dues. I'm like, I'm not invited to those things. I'm like, why are you calling me for money? Like, I'm supposed to just pay for this and just suck it up because this is my child. I'm like, I felt so disrespected. And like, she's like, you definitely not getting invited if you don't give me the money. I said, you wasn't gonna invite me anyway. He's like, I give you the money. Like,
Mm.
so like, it's a lose-lose for me. And like I said, my daughter better off calling me because my daughter would call me. I would have get it immediately. Like, yeah, I need money for senior dues. You have enough 2 minutes, and I would have cash apped it to her. No problem. But you calling me, asking me for it, I don't want to give it because I feel like being used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, look, divorce and children and all of that kind of stuff is messy, complicated craziness. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, the people who suffer the most are the kids, you
Yeah.
know, and it sucks. Like you know, my ex-husband's not my favorite person, but I
Mhm.
have learned how to get along with him because it's better for my kids. And
Yeah.
that was the hardest time ever. But it also meant about having boundaries, right? And he would pull some shady shit and I would believe him thinking he's going to be a decent guy, right? And he would, you know, screw me over every time. And so every time that happened, I had to learn how to find my boundaries and how to respect my it doesn't matter if he respects my boundaries. It matters if I respect my boundaries, right? And so
Yes.
he would say things to me and you know, instead of falling for his shenanigans, I would say, well, this is what I am willing to do, right? And this is what this will look like. You want that? I'm more than happy to do that, but I'm not willing to do this the way that you want to do this, right? And he would either give in or not give in or whatever. And as a result, we learned how to communicate, but I had to stop expecting he was going to be different or that he was ever going to put me first in any scenario, right? And I had to learn how to respect my own boundaries and I had to learn how to honor what was right. What would my kids want? What would be right for my kids? How can I do what's best for my kids, regardless of what me and him did? And that's the hardest part of the whole deal. Not everybody can do that. You know, 90% of divorces that have kids end in horrific situations where people can't talk to each other. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be. It just is a lot of the times, but it means being, you know, it's just another opportunity to learn how to grow through and learn how to be different. You know, we don't get what we deserve, we get what we negotiate, right? And that's a hard reality for a lot of people, you know, and it can always change.
Yes. I tried several things. She never put me on child support, so I give her credit for that. She never put me on child support. But I tried several times of doing stuff. Like one time, for about a year, I was giving her about $500 a week for child support.
Mhm.
No, which is way above the limit because if she was putting me on child support, she probably get less than that. And
Mhm.
I was doing that, and so one day she's like, "Oh, the kids need coats. It was winter time. It's like kids need new coats. No problem." I gave her the $500 to get the coats and stuff, and she called me and she's like, "Oh, I got his coat, but I didn't get her coat. I'm gonna get her coat No, she got my daughter coat, but didn't get my son coat.
Mhm.
So I would get that now. So let's say, my daughter calls me and she was like, yeah, she asked for something. It's like, yeah, mommy in Georgia or something like that. She took my
Mhm.
money and went to Georgia. Like, so that's when I started giving her the money for child support. And this is why when she called me for senior dues, I'm like, I'm not giving you no money. Like my daughter called me, I give her the money because
Right.
she's
Or
16.
you could say, where do I need to send the money? Tell me
That
where
too.
I need to pay the money, and I'm more than happy to pay it.
That
Right.
too.
Yeah. It's all about just knowing, how to, pay attention to who she is,
Hmm.
and then be like, if that's the truth, then there's a place for me to pay that money. Right. And I'm more than happy to pay it directly, but I'm not going to give it to you.
This is my last question for you. Then we could close. In
Mhm.
your opinion, what set apart individuals who successfully transform their lives from those who struggle to make lasting change?
I think the number one difference is the people who make a lot of excuses, right, to not start or to give up once they've started and made one mistake. Excuses are People who make excuses and people who persevere are not the same person, right? You can stop making excuses and be somebody who perseveres. But if you're somebody who justifies and rationalizes and makes explanations and makes excuses as to why something can't happen, don't worry, it never will, you know? But somebody who really wants and somebody who really wants to be different will find a way to keep making an effort to be different, and that's really what I don't want to be owned by anybody. So
Mhm.
if I run into something where I'm uncomfortable or my life isn't going the way it is, it's up to me to make it go the direction I want it to. Nobody else's. Right. And if I think that, oh, well, I don't have this and I don't have that, and there's an excuse for this, an excuse for that, go live in your excuses, right? Because you're not going to get anywhere. The second somebody stops making excuses for the poor quality of their life or the poor quality of who they are or not having their dreams met, they will have those dreams.
Yes.
That's the difference. You can usually find that out within the first 5 minutes of talking to somebody, whether they're somebody who makes excuses or somebody who just perseveres through anything.
Yes. I totally agree. You got any
Mhm.
last words for the audience?
No, I just want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. This was a great conversation, and I hope your listeners really like it.
Yes. I thank you for being the guest. I really appreciate it. Um,
Absolutely.
thank you for watching Uncomfortable Truth podcast with my special guest, Quincy Whorf. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate you.
Thanks. You too.
All information will be in the description.
Great.
Bye. Have a
Perfect.
good
You
one.
too.
Bye.
Bye.